It's more of financial intelligence, how to manage your personal finance, and how to ensure that you're not living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to meet up with the requirements and demands of life. Basically, managing your income to the best that you can manage it. Before we progress, I would just like to mention that there are several ways to earn income, and income in the financial world is what you can get from employment and what you can get from assets and investment. So, income can be active when it is from employment, and it can be passive when it's when it's from investment. So, whichever way it's coming, it's important that you understand the dynamics and how to properly manage it. So, in the world of accounting, you have assets, you have liabilities, you have income, and you have expenses. So, depending on how you look at it, income has a definition, expenses have a definition, uh, assets have definitions, and liabilities. So, you need to understand how all of this work and how you can best manage all of this to your advantage. So why it's important you ask yourself, what are you planning to do with your life based on what you're doing right now? Are you just working to pay bills, or you're planning to retire maybe at 50? So if you're planning to retire at 50, for example, what are you doing now that can ensure that you have that plan met when you finally get to 50? What are you doing now? So these are some of the things that you can do to help you in your journey. Like I said, there are different income means. The one is employment, and employment can be any income endeavor that requires your physical and physiological presence. Like I was speaking to a group of undergraduates over the week. They were asking questions around financial intelligence for young people. And I started talking about income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. So anything for employment, income for employment are things that you physically need to be there to earn the income. Um, or psychologically, it could be virtual, so it doesn't necessarily need to be you present. It could be virtual. So anything that requires you to participate actively, that is employment. So it could be a business, it could be a side job, it could even be a trade. A lot of people misinterpret entrepreneurship for um on when people talk about entrepreneurship, they feel like when they start a business, that's entrepreneurship. That's actually employment if you have to be physically present. But you can set up a business, grow it to an extent, and maybe allow other people to manage it. That way, you are creating a business that can survive by itself and have people do the job for you. So you don't have to um, physically participate or actively participate to get income from such business. So if you have a trade or a business that you're involved in 100%, that is still employment. Then investment, there are different types of investment. I talked about mutual funds, stocks, bonds or partnership. So those could be investments that you have. I'm going to invite my guest shortly to talk about some of these things, but I just want to lay the foundation for those that are joining, so you know the different aspects of your income and how you can maximize, or should I say optimize, your inflow to meet your daily needs. There are the liabilities and there are assets. Some examples of assets are fund that increases your tangible or intangible things that add value to you. Those are assets. So, for example, if you have a car that generates income, say you put on transport to do Uber or something like that, you have an asset. Then education is another asset. So, like I tell people, no amount of money you spend on education is a waste. Is always an asset. And an extension to education. A lot of people just jump into education for the sole of, oh, my friend is doing it. I need to also get an MSc or an MBA. And the trick is this: for MBA, if you go to a small school, then you're probably not getting maximum advantage of enrolling an MBA. If you want to do an MBA, you have to go to the top school. That's where you get the connection. So if you're not going to a top school for MBA, then you're probably wasting time, except you just want the knowledge for the sake of the knowledge and not what the certificate will bring, which is the network and the connection that you get among your peers. Um, so that's higher education. Businesses, like I mentioned, could be an asset if you don't have to physically participate or actively participate. But if you have to participate actively, then that is an employment and not necessarily an asset, except you can participate for a while and sell it off or hand it over to someone to help you manage eventually. So that is asset. Liabilities are funds on tangible or intangible things that take away value from its owner. Again, this could be expensive cars. I feel like cars are a means to an end, things that transport you from one point to another, not necessarily anything to show off. Most people buy cars to impress people. So if you're just starting out in career or you have built some income over the years, I don't think it's the right time, or personal opinion, I don't think it's the right thing to do to buy expensive car just to show off and give an impression of people to people that you have arrived or made it, like most people would do. Yeah, but if you can afford it, fine. But if you can have alternatives to that money, then you don't need it. I see people go into debt to buy cars. They want to buy the best cars and have a brand Mercedes car or BMW, and they go in debt and they pay for the next 5 or 10 years just because they want to impress. So those could be liabilities, except of course if that car is bringing in money. Then you have people that do jewelries, to just wear expensive jewelries. I heard of one guy that actually did a jewelry on his forehead, and he was robbed, and eventually they removed um, the, I think it was diamond or so on his forehead. Funny. So luxuries and things like that. So I'm going to invite my guest now, and we can continue the conversation. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, hello,
How are you
Amonze.
doing?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing
Just
great,
gonna set.
thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Just before you introduce yourself, let me just give a background of what we're doing tonight. The topic again is tricks to financial management for young professionals. And like I usually do when I have my sessions, I've written two books. The first one is Succeeding in Your Career, which is, of course, a roadmap for young professionals. And also, Let's Talk About Money, which is one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, how to manage your finances. The focus of these two books are for young professionals or graduates, people that are just starting out in their career, or people that are looking for things that could inspire them in what they do. So that's what I do. As part of that, I do interview coaching, career coaching, personal finance coaching as well. These are things I do to help people in this area. So I'm going to be going straight to introduce Amanze. And just before she comes in, Amanze would talk more about herself, but just to give you an overview, Amanze is an experienced professional with over 7 years of experience in tax consulting for corporates across different sectors, finance, and expense management. She currently works with one of the top merchant banks in Nigeria. She's also an avid writer, blogger, and she's interested in poetry, life hacks, coaching, and learning new languages. Um, so if you're a young professional, expect you to keep your attention on what we are going to discuss today, and I hope that you find it useful. As we proceed, Amonzi, do you want to give us a brief introduction of your background and experience?
Okay. Thank you, Ifem. Good evening, everyone. Yeah. So basically, you summarized everything. I've been working as a professional for almost 8 years now, and I've been in tax consulting space. I've been in financial space, expense management, and I currently work with one of the top merchant banks in Nigeria. That basically sums up as far as my professional life is concerned.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have talked extensively about, oh, should I say, we have talked about things about personal finance as it relates to your personal um, finance. So, do you have specific? I know you have background in accounting, even though you didn't mention that. So background in accounting, so it might just be part of your training that you now developed, or some people might say, oh, because you have that background, you would probably have been taught in school how to manage your money and things like that. Um, just before we dive into the tricks, do you want to give us a background around how you came into the finance world, accounting world?
Okay, so I would say, so I studied accounting at the University of Benin. I've always been interested in the accounting space. Like, I've always wanted to do this from as far back as I can remember. So after graduating from the University of Benin, searching for jobs, there were banking opportunities, there were consulting opportunities, there were different sorts of opportunities out there. So I applied to a couple of them, and I was thrilled to get into one of the top consulting firms in Nigeria. So of course, getting into the one of the top four consulting firms, it meant a lot of hours working, trying to understand the procedures, and basically training to be a professional, certification, examinations, and whatnot. So that's basically how it all started. And in terms of how my accounting career or my accounting background fits into how I manage my finances, right? Yes, you could say because I have some background in it, so it works well to just apply all the principles learned to my finances. But I'll tell you that I know a lot of people who don't have any background in finance, but they are really shrewd and really very good at managing their finances. And there are also people with a background in finance who do not even apply this principle. It's more of a personal bargain with yourself, it's more of a personal bargain in terms of your experience on how you manage your finances.
Thank you so much. So, just a summary or one point that you made, I think, is interesting. Is it's not necessarily your background or what you learned in school, but mostly what you are interested in, things that you want to personally develop and to succeed in. And just an extension of that, I feel like it's not it's a skill that is required for life and not necessarily something that you have to study to build a career from. So it's something that in whatever aspect of life that you work, it's a skill that is necessary because you need money to survive. Before again, just to get some insight, before you start managing money, you have to make money. Can you give us a few um, things that I know that you are involved in some other things apart from your core, or should I say, other sources of income apart from your core employment? It might not be, it could be an investment, for example. So, how do you manage that? How do you get money first as a young professional like yourself?
So for me, my major source has always been my core employment. So that's like the plan A, the first point of any form of money to invest. So I mean, it was for me. It drives my other sources of income. For some other people, it could be 50-50. It could be in different levels of percentages. But for me, I would say right now it's about 80-20, and it's 80-20 because most of my investments over the years have been more passive. So it's just something you invest in, maybe real estate, and you expect to get um, returns over a period of time. So the driving point for everyone, it depends on how you earn. If your major source of earning, I spend most of my time at my 9 to 5. So I expect that most of my income really comes from there. It's just reasonable to think that way. So for other people, I mean, based on their investment in time, is also what they recoup in terms of their return on money. So in terms of sources of fundings for investment, for me, it's always been my full-time 9 to 5 employment.
Cool. Thanks so much. Yeah, so back to the main point of the day. I don't know if you have some advice. I don't want this session to go too long. Just hitting the point and just driving it home. What advice would you give to people that are just starting out or people that have started? What financial advice can you give them on how to manage their funds? It could be a number of points, then maybe give practical examples from your own experience.
Okay, so I basically have alighted some points which I would speak to one of, but something came to my mind just now. So as a young professional, I would say be more aggressive in your savings at the beginning. So in terms of, you make 100% salary and you're thinking, if I save 20%, what would I use to do this, to do that, to sort this out, to sort those out, to sort your wants out majorly. So I would say at the early stage, be aggressive. No one expects you to, drive the best car or stay in an elite apartment or do something major at the beginning of your career. So it's at that point you can actually aggressively save for potential opportunities that will come, because they will come. It's just if you are prepared to take those opportunities. That's the only question. So, I mean, something I would like to chip in just for starters. We're talking to young professionals out there. Be very aggressive with your savings at the early stage, because things come up as you progress. As you progress on the ladder or in your career or in your business, you just be progressing in business. There will be some, um, how would I say it, some responsibilities, some things you need to do to improve your brand, some added costs added here and there that will definitely impact how much you're able to save and invest at a later period. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just before you go, I think a question just came in from Yika, and he's asking what percentage of the income should we call aggressive? Maybe you want to take that before you give us other tips.
Yeah, so I like to work with percentages when it comes to savings and investment because it's easier. It's much more difficult to say you have 40K and you don't know what percentage you want to save. But if you tell yourself that you want to save maybe a percentage of maybe 10%, 20%, in comparison with that 40,000 naira, it will work. I can give myself as a case study. So my first salary was 40,000 naira as an Access Bank trainee. When we were, I mean, you have to do training school first before you get into the job. And at that time, I was going, like the distance from my home to the training school was quite a lot. When I did my transport alone, it was like more than almost half of my income. So in terms of how do I now save when I'm already spending a lot commuting to and fro? Fortunately, it may not be the same criteria for a lot of people, but fortunately, I was staying somewhere and paying no rent at that point in time. So aggressive for me then was telling myself that at least 10% of my salary, whatever it is that happens that day or that month or whatever, I should just save it down. There was really nothing I was saving towards. It was just save something, just keep saving something. So as my income progressed, definitely savings progressed also. Aggressive can be as high as 20%. Yes, aggressive can be as high as 50% for some people. So it all really depends on you starting from your budget, from your plan. So I didn't mention this, but my first line of defense is always the budget. I mean, if I don't have a budget, then what are we spending on? So once you have a budget, you already have that. My transport costs this costs that. What do I need to drop in order to save the percentage I consider aggressive to save? So that just gives you a mental picture. When things come up, you're already like, I don't know if I have this much disposable income at hand. So you pen them, you push them further, or you roll over to another period in time. So aggressive can be as high as 20. Aggressive can be as high as 50. Depends on you. But rule of thumb, I mean, you know what they say, save 20 for rent, 20, don't spend more than 20%. So if it's a rule of thumb, I would say 20-15% is fair. Considering where you live, you're in Lagos, for example, considering your environment and the things you need to spend on. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I think that addresses um that question. But just to chip in, I think there are a lot of people keep asking this question again and again. That oh, and so little. How can I save and all that? And one thing I always tell them is this: you can't. What a lot of people say, you can't give what you don't have. So if you earn say 100K and you have to pay rent. There are basic needs that have to be met. Your physiological needs, which includes your house, your food, and your clothing. Those are basic needs that need to be met, and they are not negotiable. The only negotiation you can do is reducing how much you spend on clothing, for example. So there are basic needs where you can just buy the affordable ones instead of buying the flashy ones. and that would could reduce your spending. Then again, depending on where you stay, there are some people that want to stay in high brown areas. You know how that would dip into your pocket. So maybe start with the middle place. We stay in Lagos, for example, and you just like to stay in Lekki because oh, you just feel like that's where you're supposed to be. I will usually tell you maybe stay around Maryland, for example, for starters, or Ikeja, or somewhere in the middle to just know that you're not somewhere in Okokomaiko or Agbado Ijaye, things like that. But yeah, you know what works for you. Then food, of course, you can make your own food instead of cooking outside. This way, you're saving costs and you're able to save more from that. And once you are able to cut all of those basic needs to the bare minimum, not like you are punishing yourself, no, but you're still living a comfortable life, then you spend more fun that you can save from. So aggressive, like she said, could be as much as 15, even 10%, depending on your circumstance. I know people that save up to 50% of their income. And some people, depending on how much they earn, they can save as much as 70%. And so it just depends on your own circumstance and not necessarily what people tell you about 20%, 100%, whatever percentage. You determine your percent. Moving on, I'm expecting actually like five tricks that you share with us. You have shared one, which is the aggressive savings, and you have said that extensively on how young professionals should go all out and cut whatever what they need to do to save, and they should start that early. What other tricks do you want to share with us today?
Yeah, so secondly, I've mentioned this already, but I'll say plan your money. Be deliberate about your money. I mean, nothing will happen if you don't do a budget. You could have, I mean, people have said they have mental pictures of their budget in their mind and say, oh, I'm going to spend just this on that. But the truth is that if you don't really note it down and stick to your own budget, that's in terms of budget discipline, nothing will happen. So that's a trick because for me, I tend to end up spending below my budget just because I have a budget. And it's not like I'm going to now start, as you said, you're not suffering, you're not, struggling. But because I already know this is all I have for this particular expense, most times I end up a lot of miscellaneous, like, okay, over this, I've spent less than what I planned to spend. So that's one very important hack. Like, you need to have a budget. A third one I would say is we need to also, I mean, a lot of motivational speakers will say this. I mean, people you surround yourself with, your group of friends, people you move with, your network, and all that. It's also good for you if you're not going to be someone who is self accountable to have people around you that think like that. If you have a couple of friends that feel they don't need to spend so much on going to a club, for instance, it's easier for you to save your money that way. I mean, if friend won't call me up to come to a club at so time, that's an extension, really telling me that, oh, baby, you need to spend like additional 50K on top of what you had already spent this week. So, I mean, those excesses, people around you also matter. So that's something that's worked well for me. Other things, I mean, some organizations, you may have cooperatives that could help you spend with direct debits to your account. Once you step into a place or an organization and you discover that there's such a structure that works for a cooperative or a very on an objective cooperative, not I'm not really saying a draw or people coming together to put in money, something that is structured and you can rely on. It's safe for you to, even though you don't know what you want to use the money for at that point in time, just join and contribute a portion of your salary. Just do it gradually. The opportunity will surely knock. And when it happens, you have something to fall back on and say, okay, I can contribute this bit to earn this bit. from whatever investment it is. Yeah, I think there are a lot of hacks, but those are the ones that come easily to mind right now to share.
Thank you so much, Manze. And these are very good points, and just working with this alone can already put your finances into perspective. Now, all of this point that you have mentioned all boils down to um, saving. Now, the next question I would like to ask is, so what do you do? Is that the goal? Are we just saving just to save? There are other things that what one could do, because I think there are a lot of things that affect, especially people in Nigeria. There are a lot of things that affect just saving.